Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Fired for what the school district calls egregious conduct.
It's so far-fetched to me.
An education assistant in Port Coquitlam loses her job after posting racy content online. Plus, a looming economic disaster.
This is costing the Canadian economy more than $1 billion a day. It is simply unacceptable to consumers and to retailers.
The growing pleas from businesses desperate for a resolution to BC's port strike. And keeping moms and kids together in the midst of an addictions crisis.
I really like it because then I get to spend more quality time with my mom.
The program on Vancouver's downtown east side and why it's being called transformative.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Talks between the union representing port workers and their employer remain stalled as day 4 of the port strike in BC comes to a close. Tonight, there are more calls for the federal government to step in, with the strike costing businesses and the economy overall a lot of money. Our Susanna De Silva is live near the Port of Vancouver and joins us now. Susie, where do talks stand at this point?
Well, right now they are on pause. They are not happening. The port behind me, you can see, is very quiet. Nothing is moving, nothing's going in, nothing is coming out at this point. A statement from the union a short time ago put the blame solely on the employers, that it was the employers that walked away from the table, but they are willing to come back at any hour to resume negotiations. They say the major issue is around contracting out of maintenance work. That is the employer that will not agree to a document that has been drafted and is complete, except for one sentence, they say. On the other hand, the employers say it is up to the union, that they are ready to go back to the bargaining table at any point, as long as the union puts forward what they call, quote, a reasonable proposal. Now, the calls are growing for the federal government to step in to legislate those workers back to their jobs, but that isn't something the federal minister has indicated at this point. He sent out a tweet today saying they are committed to the federal mediators, going on to say that we encourage both parties to immediately return to the bargaining table and remain there until a deal is reached. That collective bargaining is hard work, but it's how the best, most resilient deals are made. So again, not indicating they're willing to step in at this point anyway. The federal NDP also saying that they would not support back-to-work legislation.
Okay, so not a whole lot moving behind you, not a whole lot moving in terms of the talks. What are you hearing from businesses and how all of this is impacting them?
Yeah, well, the concern is growing. They're watching it. Some are saying it's still a bit early. We're only a few days in, but they are watching it very closely. Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association talked about the fact that about 16% of all goods are coming through BC ports. That's about $500 million every single day. They want the federal government to step in. We did speak to some trucking companies who are at almost a complete standstill now. One of them saying they have a lot of drivers they've maintained on call are still paying other employees because they are afraid to let them go and then not be able to get them back. But they say at some point that will have to change. They won't be able to continue doing that. Other companies in construction saying, you know, if one trade gets delayed, that delays others, and there is a cascading effect. We also spoke to a company, they do furniture manufacturing. They custom bring in furniture for people, and they are worried about how long this strike could go.
Everything is made specifically for our clients. It's not like we have inventory that's ready in stock. So our entire business model is built off of made-to-order lead times. With an 8 to 12 week lead time, it sounds great in theory, but if it becomes 12 to 16 or 20 and more, it really does hurt our businesses, and people do get upset, and understandably, they had expectations that we just couldn't meet.
And there is concern that some of those clients could say they want refunds because those deadlines were not met. Now, again, a lot of them saying that is still a little bit early. There is leeway there. Experts saying a lot of businesses have learned to adapt, especially after COVID. They might have more stock on hand. They build in more contingencies, but it is harder for smaller businesses, rather. And at this point, experts say it is hard for businesses to plan.
For many businesses, it's a catch-22. Once they start making arrangements for alternative routes that are more expensive and they may be locked into that and the strike ends earlier than they thought, they're on the hook for the higher expenses. At the same time, they're not making those adjustments, then they may not get deliveries. And in any case, at a higher cost and at delays.
And he says, really we're looking at 1 to 2 weeks maybe where you really begin to see those cascading effects. So a lot of people watching very closely because those impacts could start piling up very quickly.
No kidding. And we'll be speaking live later in the show with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce on this. Susanna De Silva reporting tonight from the Port of Vancouver. Thank you. The man who attacked an Uber driver in Abbotsford has been sentenced to 1 day in jail and a year's probation. This video is from April. It shows the passenger repeatedly punching the driver in the head. The BC Prosecution Service today confirms William Tickle pleaded guilty to assault. He's received credit for the 44 days he spent in custody before sentencing. He's also been ordered to pay a $100 victim surcharge. This case sparked calls for better protections for gig workers like ride-sharing drivers. An education assistant in Port Coquitlam has been fired over her second job. As Liam Britton explains, the single mom had an OnlyFans account with racy content to help make ends meet. But the school district calls that, quote, egregious misconduct.
Kristen McDonald says she was only taking home about $1,000 every 2 weeks as an education assistant at a Port Coquitlam high school.
It's just not enough.
That's why she was also Ava James, who posted adult photos and videos on social media accounts like OnlyFans.
That was very bothersome to them.
Them being the school district she worked for. They told her to stop posting adult content, but she refused. Last month, they fired her.
In this day and age, we should be able to do what we want, as long as it's not illegal. I'm not hurting anybody.
The school district said in a termination letter that McDonald disparaged the district in media interviews, posted content that sexualized the school environment, and connected her school work to her adult content work through interviews and capitalized on that connection. McDonald says she's put in for a grievance with her union. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says she's concerned about the safety of Indian diplomats in Canada after seeing a poster promoting a protest over the death of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Nijjar was shot and killed a couple of weeks ago outside a Gurdwara in Surrey. He was a vocal supporter of an independent Sikh state. A poster promoting an upcoming protest near Toronto shows photos of India's 2 top diplomats in Canada and calls them killers. In a statement, Minister Melanie Joly says Canada takes its international obligation to uphold the safety of foreign diplomats very seriously. A company found to be illegally dumping waste on a property near Cultus Lake has started trucking the material out. Residents sounded the alarm over the waste, fearing it could contaminate their local water supply. As John Hernandez reports, they are happy their efforts have paid off, but they're still wondering how long the removal will take.
I've said from the beginning that we wanted it stopped, we wanted it cleaned up.
These waste piles still stink, but there's also elation in the air in this small community near Cultus Lake.
It was the smell of success. The word I want to try and hang my hat on is vindication.
Columbia Valley resident Darcy Henderson watched a truck roll in last Wednesday and haul out a load of waste. She was among the first residents who filed complaints as this makeshift landfill emerged in her community last year, fearing it could contaminate the local water supply.
We're very pleased that the truckloads have started to leave. It's a teaspoon at a time. There's certainly not the robust number of trucks taking material out as there was bringing material in.
The waste was unloaded by the company Fraser Valley Renewables on a property owned by farmer Bruce Vanderwick. The company said it was meant to enhance the soil, but complaints led to a visit by provincial inspectors who found it was so contaminated with garbage that the piles amounted to an illegal waste dump. A stop work order was issued in December. The Agricultural Land Commission ordered that removal begin by June 14th. The first truck rolled in about 2 weeks after the deadline. Local leaders say navigating regulations and finding out just who could stop it was time-consuming.
It was frustrating. I think that was part of the challenge, and my hope really is that that's something that can be improved upon down the road, because our thought was this is a big deal.
CBC News has reached out to the company for comment on the waste removal. The ALC says the waste must be gone in a year and the soil remediated. It's also considering fines. Residents hope regulators keep up the pressure.
We're excited, cautiously optimistic. We're going to work closely with the ALC, and they've done a good job of communicating so far, but it'll be really interesting to see what real enforcement will happen, right? How are we really going to make it painful enough for them to, I mean, this is a vast amount of waste.
As for where this waste is going next, the ALC says it doesn't know, but told the company it can't be dropped off at another farm. John Hernandez, CBC News, near Cultus Lake.
A massive fire has gutted a building in downtown Vernon. It happened early this morning and ripped through several business units. There are no injuries, but a nearby apartment housing homeless and at-risk residents was evacuated as a precaution. The fire is under investigation and is considered suspicious in nature. Several roads remain closed as crews are now in the process of demolishing the building. A new wildfire on Vancouver Island is burning in the Sayward Valley. The Browning Creek fire is about 2 hectares in size and currently listed as out of control. These flames are getting closer to the home, so the Sayward Fire Department is currently trying to protect about 12 structures in case the direction of the blaze changes.
Home, and there was the retardant jets going over and water bombers and helicopters, and they've been going steady, so hopefully they can get it out.
Right now we're pre-positioning water bladders, like that one over there, in 2 locations, and then we're going to put house protection units in place and lay hoses, just in the event that the fire spreads.
Coastal Fire Center says the blaze is human-caused, and while the wind is also causing some challenges, there doesn't seem to be too much growth. And meteorologist Russ Kate joins us now. Wildfires bringing smoke definitely to the Lower Mainland today, like you predicted.
Yeah, we saw some of that smoke, absolutely. There's a little haze aloft, a little smoke aloft, call it what you will. It's not like you can smell it locally, but you can certainly see it. And I have a look at our satellite shot here. Our satellite analysis shows you that ridge of high pressure pretty much governing the weather across 90% of the province. The outlier, of course, some thunderstorms triggered here in the southeast. They're cruising on through parts of Cranbrook right now, barely grazing the easternmost Columbias. They'll be out of the district in about the next 6 hours, and then it dries out again for tomorrow. Vancouver Island, it looks like precipitation. That's all evaporating on its way down to the ground from that little weak system moving through right now. We have a combination of some smoke and some clouds around the Lower Mainland. This model forecast run out over the next 72 hours gives you an idea of the changes that are coming our way. As we're looking to noon tomorrow, a beautiful sunny day with some leftover haze, mind you. I want to roll this out towards the end of the week. You can get an idea of things changing, and it's mostly on Friday. An inflow will bring us a little bit of fog towards the end of the week, some scattered showers forming on the backside of the Coast Range Mountains. And of course, what that means is going to cool down too. Our temperatures in the long range will come down a little more in line with normal. We're hoping for an inflow at the end of this week to bring those temperatures down. White Rock 2 hours ago was 30 degrees. Now it's 21. That's something we can hope to find in our forecast in the days ahead. Tonight, hazy, partly cloudy, but tomorrow warming up very quickly. The haze thins and we have a lot of sunshine in the forecast. Anita, over to you.
Thanks, Russ. Dozens rallied in support of a Vancouver summer camp today after reports of threats against staff. Carousel Theatre for Young People is hosting a summer camp that lets children use drag as a tool for artistic creation. The union representing theatre stage employees says staff have been bombarded with hateful messages over this and have faced threats of physical violence. Vancouver police are aware of the protests and officers are monitoring the situation should anything criminal arise.
Everything is about love and acceptance and is fighting for the rights of equity-deserving people, especially people that are trans, people that are in the Two-Spirit LGBTQAI+ community.
In response to the protests, the theatre has also set up a fundraiser to hire security to keep their staff and campgoers safe. Well, some lucky kids got to take part in a very special basketball camp today, hosted by Raptors superfan Anita Bathe. The Canadian businessman founded the Superfan Foundation to unite people through the love of sport.
To make the kids feel, give them the confidence and have them feel like they are being drafted into a WNBA or an NBA team. They get their lockers, they get their uniforms, they get their drills.
Bathe says he feels really grateful for the opportunities he's had and wants to pass that on. The foundation is a nonprofit organization that raises money to build basketball courts and camps for kids here in Canada and across the globe. Today's participants were basking in the star treatment.
It feels really nice. I feel like an NBA player. They taught me how to do my layups more smoothly.
It's really nice, and I really like the message that it's kind of like sending, so it feels really good to be here.
This year is the first time the foundation has run the program in BC. The sold-out camp runs until Thursday in Langley. A man known for opening a store to sell drugs on the downtown east side is being remembered as a kind and loving person. Jerry Martin operated a makeshift shop that was only open for a day before police shut it down. His family says he died from an overdose last week. Yasmin Renea is looking at his potential legacy.
We're on our way to talk to Krista Thomas. She's the partner of Jerry Martin, who died on Friday of a suspected fentanyl overdose. But in May, he opened a drugstore selling tested cocaine, heroin, and other illicit drugs because he wanted to give people a safe supply of drugs.
As far as I know, the overdoses have tripled now. So without a clean, safe supply, it's just going to get worse.
It was illegal to do so, but he knew he could be arrested, and he was arrested just less than 24 hours after he opened the shop. But he told us one of his goals, if he was arrested, was to launch a constitutional challenge arguing for a legal, safe supply of drugs in Canada. So we're standing at Main and Cordova right now, where Jerry had his store. How does it feel being here right now?
I think that I haven't had time to process what has actually happened as of yet. So surreal is kind of the only thing that I can think to say.
Martin was found unresponsive in a vehicle last Tuesday. He was taken to hospital and put into a medically induced coma. Days passed, CT scans showed he had significant brain damage, believed to be caused by a drug overdose. He'd only have primitive functions, such as swallowing and coughing. His partner and mother made the difficult decision to end his suffering and pull him off life support. So let's go back a little bit and talk about Jerry and who he was.
He lived a million lifetimes in this lifetime, having been on the streets himself for several years, conquered addiction for 15 years. He'd been on both sides of it, and he could truly relate and connect to people on either end. And that's essentially why he wanted to do this project, was, to bridge the understanding that addiction happens, and it's ironic and it's tragic that he is one of his own statistics today.
How was he a few days before his death? I was looking on Facebook on his profile, and he had posts about how he had no place to stay and he had lost his drug vault.
Following the first arrest, he was stopped by police again. They seized the second vehicle, and the financial turmoil that kind of came with the first arrest followed by the subsequent ones, it snowballed. For the amount of times that man has been knocked down in his lifetime, he always got back up. And I think I just thought he'd get back up. We know that he wouldn't be carrying a supply that could ever be tainted or cross-contaminate with other supplies, but the fentanyl was found in his system, and so it begs the question whether he had his own supply that day or made an impulsive decision.
Martin's partner will now lead the fight to launch a constitutional challenge.
It is a big undertaking that has a large price tag associated with it. There is enough people that would love to continue this in his name.
I got a statement from the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and she sends her condolences to Jerry's loved ones. And she says the toxic drug crisis demands that we use all of the tools in our toolbox, and that includes safe supply.
The BC port strike has lasted a fourth day. After the break, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce is live with us on the impacts for businesses across the country. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. A Newfoundland artist had their designs turn up on other websites without their permission. Her pieces, which feature landscapes and mermaids, were being printed on T-shirts and sold online. But as she tells us, there's not much that can be done about it.
I'm a traditional artist, so I work in
ink and watercolors using a paintbrush, as well as pens and stuff. So I do a lot of kind of Newfoundland inspired landscapes, and I also do a lot of narrative illustrations featuring women and mer people and animals and werewolves and monsters and stuff like that. Well, at the time, I'd been doing a lot of mermaid illustrations anyway, but you know, when I seen the Merboz calendar, it kind of inspired that particular design. So yeah, I illustrated that, and it's since become one of my most popular images, really. I think people were just excited to see mermaids that, you know, were men and were more diverse, and it's just a really colorful, fun print, and I think people resonated with it. So I had like an 8x10 one and a 11x14, and I sold them locally and also online. Well, I got a message on my Instagram saying, "Hey, I seen, you know, this shirt, and I know it's your design. Like, you know, did you know about this?" Like, they were just kind of checking in, and I seen, you know, that print had been put on a kind of a button-up shirt and sold on this website, and that was really discouraging to see, and there was a lot of other people's like stolen art on the website as well. And since then, like a few more websites have popped up. They seem to be quite similar. I don't know if it's all the same company or whatever, but they seem to be just kind of manufacturing shirts with stolen art, including mine. It sucks, you know. The pandemic has not been easy for artists. Well, it's not been easy for anybody, but you know, it's been a struggle, and to think that, you know, some company might be making money off my stolen image, you know, it hurts. I sent an email and said, "Hey, like, this is my, you know, design. Can you please remove it?" And so they said, "Okay, well, you know, we'll remove it," and they did. But like I said, then they came with, you know, they put another shirt up with another stolen design. So I don't know what I can do, because I'm sure this company is overseas. So I don't know how to go forward, basically. I'm kind of trying to speak to local lawyers maybe and see, is there anything I can do? But I'm not holding out much hope that I'll get, you know, a big compensation for what they sold or anything. I would say support local artists. If you can buy something from them, or, you know, that they made with their own two hands, or even like, you know, share the work online, and make sure that the designs that you're buying, maybe on a website, are from a reputable source, I guess. Yeah, just support local artists, I would say.
The strike at BC's ports is wrapping up its fourth day, with talks between both sides at a standstill. More than 7,000 workers who load and unload cargo at more than 30 of the province's ports are on the picket lines, but their employer says the union's demands are outside any reasonable framework for settlement. Joining me live to talk about the overall economic impacts of this strike is Matt Holmes, Senior VP with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Matt, we keep talking about the business impact and that this could be significant for the entire continent, but what does that actually mean? What concrete things are we going to see if this strike continues?
Well, I think the effects for consumers, Anita, are going to be a little further out, and you know, we'll see perhaps some shortages, perhaps some things that aren't on the store shelves in the short term. But really, the impact is immediate for businesses. This is going to really paralyze trade that's coming in and out of the Western ports. And that's quite profound. It's $800 million of trade a day, every single day. A week, if this drags on, it's $5.5 billion of disrupted trade. So we're going to start seeing ships in the ports unable to unload. We're going to see bottlenecks in our rail lines that can't move goods through the country anymore. And we're going to see increased truck traffic from diverted trade that goes down to the US, bringing our business to the US ports, and then trying to find its way back up to Canada. So the ripple effect of this will be profound. It will cause inflationary prices. It will cause shortages. It will cause disruption to Canadian businesses and pain for Canadian families.
So when you say that things will be diverted to the U.S., you know, products could actually perhaps go all the way down to L.A. and then come all the way back up here?
That's right. We could see, and we're already seeing ships that are diverted. We're seeing ships that are held up. We're seeing products and rail lines that are suspended. And it's not just the goods coming into the country. It's a lot of the important products that we sell to the rest of the world and that they're dependent on. Potash fertilizer, for example, metal ore out of BC that's destined for car manufacturers in Asia, and all kinds of goods that we're currently on the hook to sell to our partners.
Yeah, far-reaching in terms of the industries actually involved in this. It doesn't look like government, I mean, at this point, is going to reconvene and bring in back-to-work legislation. There's no sign of that. How badly is that needed, in your opinion?
It needs to happen now. And frankly, recalling Parliament and moving forward back-to-work legislation, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time. So they need to start the process now in order to resolve this quickly. You know, a few tweets from the Labor Minister isn't really helpful here. The Labor side has clearly moved from the table to the picket lines. The employer side doesn't seem to feel like the talks will lead to any sort of resolution. And so bromides about, you know, the best deals at a negotiation table just doesn't do it. This is, you know, billions of dollars to the Canadian economy, and it's hitting us right now at a time that our business community, our families are all dealing with affordability crisis. Pricing is going through the roof, and the economy is just really volatile right now. So we don't need this sort of disruption.
Matt Holmes is the Senior VP with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, joining us live tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
One of Canada's best-known cold cases cracked almost 50 years after it happened. The identity of the woman known as Nation River Lady finally uncovered, and the man suspected of killing her charged. More after the break.
About 1,500 tourists are stranded in the remote town of Stuart, British Columbia, following a spectacular fire that destroyed the only bridge leading out of the community. The 91-meter wooden bridge on the Alaska-BC border went up like kindling. Arson is suspected. We have this report from Larry Rose.
An old wooden bridge used to go across the Bear River right here. That is, until yesterday. The bridge caught fire, and today, well, there's not much left of it. The fire cut off all traffic south to the rest of BC. This highway is the only way into Stuart or out of it. Police are looking into the possibility the fire was deliberately set.
It was in the afternoon.
Yeah, about 2 in the afternoon?
Yes.
And the bridge was gone in how long?
After about 2 hours, it was down.
The bridge fire might have merely been an inconvenience, except that this week about 1,500 tourists are in Stuart for 50th anniversary celebrations. So far, the residents and tourists are taking the whole thing calmly.
I don't know. I've never seen anybody that was too concerned yet.
But frankly, in Stuart, the biggest problem is finding something to do. The only road left open is a 2-mile strip down to nearby Hyder, Alaska. So what's for everybody to do?
Oh, we'll just go get hyderized, I think.
Hyderized? What does that mean?
Oh, drinking over the other side in Hyder.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The pub over there.
Yeah.
The Department of Highways crews are continuing to work at full speed. But even so, it's going to be afternoon on Thursday before a temporary bridge can be put in place. Larry Rose, CBC News, Stuart.
Some people call the Stuart building a landmark. For 73 years, it stood next to Stanley Park with the more modern apartment blocks of the West End behind it. But on Tuesday, it could be a pile of memories, something the people at today's rally don't want to see.
This building, I think, is a very special landmark to the people of Vancouver. Even if people don't know it by name, they certainly know it by sight. And it has some very unique architectural qualities. For example, in the bay windows, which are very typical of early turn-of-the-century wood frame apartment buildings. And probably the most special architectural detail of this building is the turret. And you know, our city, we need new buildings and we need old buildings. And if we lived in a city that just had all new buildings, we wouldn't have any character to our city.
The decision to demolish the Stuart building comes after the fire marshal declared it unsafe a few months ago, then ordered it be torn down or fixed up. Since then, about 2,500 people have signed a petition to save the building, and the protesters are now hoping public pressure will get council to change its decision by Tuesday.
Australian researchers have reported the first ever diagnosis of a female athlete with CTE. That's the degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head injuries. As Katie Nicholson tells us, it was found in the brain of Heather Anderson, an Australian woman who died last year of a suspected suicide.
On the field, Heather Anderson was known for her signature pink helmet.
It just gave Mum a sense of security, knowing I was a little bit protected out there.
But the late Aussie rules footballer has a new legacy. Anderson is now officially the first female athlete to be diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, the degenerative brain disease linked to contact sports like football and hockey, which can lead to dementia and cognitive and mental health issues.
Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and thoughts of suicide.
Dr. Charles Tatter says he expects more cases of CTE to be diagnosed in female athletes, but that determination can only be made after death.
We've got 10 stars who have signed up, 10 Canadian women athletes who have willed their brains to us when the time comes, who are concerned about the issue of CTE.
News of this first in women's sport causing some to worry, like former women's national soccer player Amy Walsh.
I've suffered probably 4 or 5 concussions over the course of my career, and those were the ones that were diagnosed. I'm sure there were other ones.
Walsh sees this as a sign there needs to be more research on women in sport. After all, hundreds of male athletes have already been diagnosed with CTE.
Hopefully it spearheads the need for funding, the need for more research to try to discover and delve a little bit deeper into the mechanisms of why.
Neurologist Matthew Burke says science already shows women appear to be affected more by concussions.
They tend to have worse outcomes in the short term in terms of the persistence of their symptoms.
Still, he stresses not everyone who gets a concussion will develop CTE.
You can't live in a bubble. We just have to be very mindful of the risks that we're learning as science evolves.
And the sports possibly evolve with it. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
For nearly 50 years, her murder was a mystery. But tonight, police have finally laid charges in an Ontario cold case. Jewel Parchman Langford disappeared in 1975. Her body was found in an Ontario river. As Marina von Stackelberg tells us, investigators struggled to identify the remains until now.
Nearly 50 years after she died, a new tombstone. Finally home and at peace, Jewel Parchman Langford. The 48-year-old Tennessee woman went missing in 1975, soon after moving to Montreal. Police investigated, but the case went cold.
Up until my grandmother's death, she never let up on trying to find her, hired private investigators to try to locate her and see if anybody could find anything. Nothing ever turned up.
The link never made until now to a woman's body found just a month after Langford disappeared. Dumped in a river along the Trans-Canada Highway between Montreal and Ottawa. Wrapped in scraps of cloth, towels, and rags, her hands and feet bound with neckties. Another unsolved case. 6 years ago, Ontario Provincial Police unveiled a clay sculpture based on her remains, hoping someone might recognize her. But the breakthrough came last year using DNA testing and genealogy.
I was contacted by the local FBI here, and they asked me if I would be willing to give DNA. They had a body that they thought might be our missing aunt. We were told that it was a match and that we finally knew where she was.
The rise of DNA and genetic genealogy is helping police crack cold cases, like the notorious Golden State Killer. Instead of only relying on DNA collected from suspects, investigators have a much larger pool to search from.
People take at-home tests and they put their genetic profile in public databases where we are able to make matches and we're able to generate investigative leads for the investigators so they are able to pinpoint families.
With that connection made, police tracked down and charged a man with her murder.
You've seen all these cases that were unsolved using conventional techniques, relying on legacy DNA databanks. All being solved in rapid succession.
That's Marina von Sackelberg reporting tonight. Well, Israel says it is winding down its insurgence into the occupied West Bank. This is the second day of what military is calling an anti-terrorism action in the Jenin refugee camp. At least 10 deaths have been reported in connection with the operation. As Chris Brown tells us, thousands have fled the camp, and today there was an attack on civilians in Tel Aviv.
Israel's military may have started to withdraw from Jenin, but thousands of civilians who were caught in the crossfire are still dealing with the consequences. Since yesterday, it's been difficult, said this man. A drone was shooting at us, and we're all so tired, we've had nothing to eat or drink. Israeli soldiers use stun grenades and tear gas to clear areas as they search for militants in the densely packed refugee camp. Its military claims ammunition, explosives, and a warren of hidden passages were discovered under a mosque. The violence, however, was not contained to Jenin. In Tel Aviv, a Palestinian man crashed his car onto a crowded sidewalk and then went on a stabbing rampage, wounding at least 7. It was in retribution for Israel's raid, said Hamas, who claimed the man as one of their members. He got out through the vehicle's window, said a teacher who saw the attack. He had a knife in his hand and started chasing civilians, and we ran for our lives. The 21-year-old attacker was shot dead by a passerby. Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has defended Israeli settlers who've burned Palestinian homes, showed up to encourage Israelis to start carrying guns. Weapons save lives, he said. Parts of Jenin, meanwhile, were left in ruins. Roads were destroyed. Supplies of water and electricity were cut.
We're seeing one of the hospitals being subjected to tear gas.
Canadian Lynn Hastings is the United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator in the occupied Palestinian territory.
So people are not able to get medical assistance. We need the humanitarian lanes. We need humanitarian workers together with the supplies to be able to get in and out.
Businesses in the West Bank remain closed in response to calls for a general strike. Palestinian officials have called Israel's actions a war crime. Israel says the Jenin refugee camp served as a headquarters for terrorists, and it has arrested dozens of militants over the past 2 days. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
El Nino has begun adding fuel to what has already been a fiery summer, why meteorologists are saying this could be the hottest year on the planet after the break.
I'm Isaac Roberts. I'm a visual artist and video maker based out of my room here in Toronto, Ontario, where I make things and edit videos. I would love a studio, but I can't afford it, so I'm here working on some props for an upcoming short film and showing you guys my creative process. So the idea for the sword is that it would be part of a larger group of vignettes that follows this teenage goblin through some sort of pre-quarter-life crisis. I've always been making films with my brother. So as kids, we'd make little movies. But then in high school, it kind of became more about community and friends. The goal was like, how many people can we get involved in these movies? It became more of like a social thing. What did we have at our disposal? What could we actually do? What's the craziest thing we could do? So a lot of that was building stuff with our hands, because that's what we were good at. I like practical effects. I find that very inspiring, especially when you're working within like a DIY aesthetic. It's something that is really achievable. Anyone who's doing anything differently is exciting, or is locally even. I guess it's more like reverse engineering. It's like using what you have available to you and making it work. I think a lot of people get obsessed with having the best quality equipment, sort of capturing everything as best you can, when I think you should really be meeting yourself where you're at creatively. The glowing sword has haunted me for years, since the werewolf movie, where we lit a sword on fire in the Humber River. I never stopped thinking about it since then. Now I just want to make a sword glow for real, and hopefully that'll be the end of it, and I can stop thinking about it. Yeah. I'm mostly trying to do things that are achievable. I don't want to wait until I have a lot of money or like the backing of a studio or something to be able to tell a certain story, so I just want to do it now. I don't see making things as contained within film or drawing or making music. I think it's a representation of community. I'll kind of do whatever people need me to do. That's how I got into music videos. It's like my friends needed a music video and I was like, let's do it. I guess the idea of DIY is changing in my mind, because now it kind of means no money. The idea of making your own movies and getting your friends involved is less of a romantic idea now that you're in your 20s and you want to pay your friends. How to pay your friends, that's the new DIY. No fires yet.
Just as scorching temperatures are stifling parts of Ontario and Quebec, the World Meteorological Organization is announcing El Nino has arrived. Ethel Musa looks at what that could mean for Canada and the world.
It says 29.19 degrees in here.
The temperature inside Noreen McLean's Toronto apartment is not much different from the scorching temperature outside.
I'm retired, I'm on a pension, so I can't afford to replace the air conditioner. Like, there's just no way.
Heat warnings have been issued for nearly all of Ontario and parts of western Quebec, with maximum temperatures in the 30s and the humidex soaring into the 40s.
The impact of the El Nino event on global temperature is likely to surge.
The World Meteorological Organization has officially declared 2023 an El Nino year. Experts say the extreme heat in Ontario and Quebec isn't caused by the naturally occurring weather event, but an already warming climate could make the effects of El Nino worse. The WMO warning a new global heat record could be set within the next 5 years, surpassing the one set in 2016.
Scorching temperatures that we've seen from Arizona to Oklahoma. We saw the United Kingdom, the warmest June on record. We saw in China incredibly warm temperatures, breaking records. A lot of people are connecting El Nino to these particular phenomena.
El Niños typically last 9 to 12 months and can have different effects in different places. In Australia, it can cause drought. In the Horn of Africa, more rain. In Canada, the climate pattern typically means warmer temperatures in the winter and spring. 1998, another El Nino year, there was a devastating ice storm in Quebec and eastern Ontario.
I would bet a few loonies on the fact that with El Nino, especially if it's strong and it's large, we're in for a warmer than normal winter coming up.
The WMO says its announcement should serve as a signal to the world to act now to protect lives and livelihoods. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Russ Kate is back with us. And Russ, what sort of role has El Nino played or is going to play in BC?
That was an amazingly comprehensive report we just watched there, and I concur with almost every element of it. El Nino is not really, you can't draw a direct correlation to an increase in wildfire activity. It simply isn't there. If we look back at the past half dozen or so significant El Ninos over the past, say, few decades. But we can draw correlations more so to what happens on this side of the 49th parallel with the wintry weather. And we do tend to have higher freezing levels, a more well-developed jet stream coming in off the eastern Pacific, and it's buoyed by those increase in the ocean temperatures for the equatorial Pacific. And oftentimes we end up with a bit of a downturn in our ski season, we'll put it that way. But certainly globally, the temperatures that are being infused from the ocean, which is increased by a couple of degrees into the lower layers of the atmosphere, is why we may break some global surface average temperatures for this year. Let's look at our cross-Canada map, shall we? Because we're talking about a heat event here in parts of southern Ontario and southern Quebec. You might be thinking, what are you talking about? It's 23 degrees in Ottawa right now. Well, the humidex was 36 a couple of hours ago, and the heat will continue to go up as well. We've got heat warnings for eastern Ontario, southern Ontario, smoky skies into parts of Quebec again, lingering smoke in parts of northeast BC. Heat warnings locally for Terrace, a forecast high of 30 degrees tomorrow. Parts of the Northwest Territories into Norman Wells, 30 degrees in the sunshine tomorrow. Imagine that. Here's our provincial satellite analysis. High pressure, a huge ridge through the province governing the weather province-wide, with the exception here down the backside of that ridge and trained in the flow, a few scattered showers and thunderstorms in and around the Kootenays. They're going to be disappearing off the radar shortly, and that leaves us with a drier day tomorrow. So province-wide, drier, warmer, 33 into the Okanagan, 33 degrees into Port Alberni. I didn't have that one on the list there. 29 for Williams Lake, 28 in Prince George. Really little, if any, precipitation to speak of, but there might be a hint of it in our longer range forecast. So for Metro Vancouver, a little leftover haze in the picture for this evening. For tomorrow, I think a little haze as well, not Friday. That's when the marine wind starts to blow, shaves the top off those maximum temperatures. A comfortable weekend with plenty of sunshine. Maybe, just maybe, some scattered showers by Tuesday of next week. Anita, it looks like things will trend a little unsettled and cloudier by then.
All right. Thank you so much, Russ. You bet. It's a crisis of incomprehensible scale, according to BC's chief coroner. More than 1,000 people have died of illicit drugs this year, and even for survivors, there can be great loss as addiction breaks families apart. One program in BC is protecting the bond between mothers and children, keeping them together during recovery. As Lindsay Duncombe shows us, the result can be transformative.
Come on out. I will show you everything. In here, we have like a lot of fun stuff like hockey sticks for hockey.
Oh, nice shot. 9-year-old Cairo and 10-year-old Serenity show off their new home.
Basketball is my favorite thing to do here. Yes! East Siders is our after-school program that we...
In the heart of Vancouver's downtown East Side, they've found safety, joy, and reunion.
So both of you were living away from your moms before you moved here, right?
Yes. Yes.
What is it like living here when you can live with your moms?
I really like it because then I get to spend more quality time with my mom. I was born with her, and I'm really happy that I get to live with her again because it was kind of a bit sad not having her when I was with my grandma.
Why don't we do Twist and Shout?
Yes, that one is definitely a banger.
Okay.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, baby, now. Come on and work it on out.
Serenity's mom, Katie, is a recovering drug addict, 18 months clean. Katie started using drugs at 14. She spent her childhood in a series of foster homes.
So like having her here is like it's huge for me because I didn't have none of that when I was a kid, like at all. And so I really want her to not experience going to foster care.
They live in an apartment created especially for families like theirs, women in recovery and their children.
I really love this building a lot. I think it saved my life big time. Because I think had I not found here, she might not be here, you know?
And without her, where would you be?
Probably out there using, and probably dead by now.
Katie's 2-bedroom apartment is one of 63 housing units in the Union Gospel Mission's Women and Family Center. The building is just over a year old. It cost $36 million, funded mostly through donations and housing grants. The concept? Keep families together, create the supports to help them heal, break the generational cycle of addiction.
You know, I hear people say, how can we clean up the downtown east side? And just these flippant attitudes about homelessness, poverty, and addiction. And they don't understand trauma. They don't understand the systemic issues. And if we can keep children with their parents, and if we can help people learn how to parent, that's how the world changes. That's how things change. Where's the dodos? Yeah.
Director Tara McDonald hangs out on the second floor whenever she can. This is where mothers in recovery live with their infants.
And being in a place like this then would allow them to keep that baby?
Yes, absolutely. So usually there's a supervision order in place, which means when mom and baby are being discharged from the hospital, they are not able to just go home with baby, but they need to come somewhere where there is that parenting support.
Everything here designed for hope, comfort, and practicality.
A bottle sterilizer, bottle warmer.
It doesn't feel institutional. There's a warmth somehow.
Yeah, and we do get that feedback from the moms when they come. They love the space. Any one of us is learning as we go as a parent. Any one of us needs support. So how much more for people who have all these obstacles or barriers, or there's the stigma. So we really look at it as like we get to partner with them and come alongside as they go on this parenting journey.
How do you make bran muffins?
There are after-school programs for children, on-site daycare, and programming for the women. They grow food in a rooftop garden and can earn money repairing donated clothes.
Okay, ready? And it goes.
What's unique about the center compared to similar programs is how long families can stay, up to 5 years. Research shows that timing reduces the possibility of relapse significantly.
Cheers.
That's a very good timeline to make some really good goals, you know.
Enough time for Tia to complete a 4-year degree in social work.
This is my dining area and the living area.
There's so much light.
I know, my beautiful view.
So what are we looking at? There's downtown Vancouver.
Downtown, yep. There's North Van over there.
Tia and her son Cairo have lived here for 10 months now, feeling worthy of this place, this chance, this view is new.
I just felt really loved on, really cared for, right? When we got this apartment, you know, that we truly did deserve it.
Addiction came quickly for Tia. Crystal meth was an escape from domestic abuse. In a year, she lost her job as an early childhood educator, contact with her family, and custody of her son.
I felt a lot of shame about myself as a mother, as a woman, you know, especially having come from like a really good family and a career.
A bad hit, meth laced with fentanyl, landed her in hospital. An outreach worker connected her to UGM. Detox and treatment followed, then a chance to be reunited at the Women and Family Center.
Everything I do is for my son, you know. Having family members and generational trauma, I think I want to be able to, I want to stop that cycle with myself.
Okay, ready? How about I do it?
Oh my God.
Serenity is making friends, doing well in school, and seems happy.
It's a lot better between us now that we live here. It's an amazing place.
I've really seen a significant change in her behavior and how she acts.
What's that like?
Oh, it's huge, because she'll just randomly go, I love you, you know, and like, I've been waiting to hear that for a long time, so, yeah.
An age-old question that causes debate every summer. Is a hot dog a sandwich? A frank conversation about footlongs after this.
This is recent footage from a pro wrestling competition in Montreal. Jeff Ferguson of Lake Echo is in the red pants. In the ring, Ferguson is known as the upperclassman Jefferson James, and he's always wanted to become a pro wrestler.
I've had this dream since I was 9 years old. It all started when I was skimming through the channels with my brother on one Friday night, and then SmackDown came on, and instantly I was hooked from there.
For the last few years, Ferguson has been taking part in some small-scale wrestling events around the Maritimes and one at Fenway Park in Boston. But now he is training for what could be his big shot at the entertainment world that is pro wrestling. Ferguson has made it to the semi-finals of a contest in Montreal that will see 2 men and 1 woman win $10,000, and more importantly for Ferguson's career, a 3-month scholarship to train with some of the biggest names in the industry at what is called the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta.
What we do is very choreographed, storytelling, you know what I mean? However, the injuries that we take, the risks that we take with our body, that's not fake at all.
On August 20th, Ferguson will find out if the upperclassmen will advance to the finals. A few years ago, he missed an entire year because he had to rehab from a herniated disc. He's hoping his training and proper technique in the ring will keep him healthy for the rest of the contest.
The risk factor is there. No matter what you do, no matter how safe you are, something can go wrong, and instantly, you can either break your neck, you can hurt your spine, you can break a leg. You know what I mean? But it's just the nature of the beast. It's the pain game. It's what we signed up for.
Paul Pomander, CBC News, Halifax.
I was at the Carnegie Initiative Conference, and they were hosting a blind hockey tournament, and it was the first time I had been exposed to the game, and it amazed me that this sport existed, and I wanted to make sure that we got involved with it back in Winnipeg.
For me, it was the only para sport that I wanted to try and enjoyed, and I think it's a good way and it's an inclusive way to get everyone on the ice.
You know, each time we do it, we are getting more participants, so it's great to see that it is growing.
There's a few adaptations, our puck is 3 times the size, and it's made of steel with ball bearings inside. Our nets are a foot shorter, so the goalies can position themselves better.
It is a big enough sport that there are, tournaments that happen, and so kind of my aspirations is that we grow this game and in Winnipeg, and then eventually potentially have a team from Winnipeg that can go and compete in other regions.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The 15th annual Latincouver Festival continues to July 20th, and CBC Vancouver is proud to be the exclusive media partner. Enjoy a series of sensational Latin American experiences and the popular Carnaval del Sol Festival. And the Herb Original is a new CBC British Columbia podcast. Stream it today on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's Independence Day in the U.S., the 4th of July, and for food enthusiasts, that means one thing, the hot dog eating contest on Coney Island. The goal is to eat as many hot dogs and buns as possible in 10 minutes. The winner of the women's contest was no surprise, Mickey Sudo. She's won the Gorge Fest 8 times before, forcing down 39.5 francs this time. That's 9 short of her record. Now, she had hoped to wolf down 50, but said the heat and humidity held her back. The men's winner, also a repeat champion, Joey Jaws Chestnut, gobbled 62 dogs for his 16th win. I can't even look at that. It's going to make me sick. Okay, that century-old hot dog eating contest is once again bringing up the age-old question, is a hot dog a sandwich? CBC headed to the streets of St. John's to find the answer.
Oh, is a hot dog a sandwich?
It's bread and meat. And
You put the bread, and then the bread, and everything else is in between. It's a sandwich.
A hot dog? No.
Why not?
No. No way. Not in the sandwich.
It is filling with bread on either side. On 3 sides even. That's like extra sandwich.
Yeah, of course. Like, what are the options? What else would it be?
Do you think that a hot dog is a sandwich?
Absolutely, and I've had this debate before.
I'd have to say no.
I think it's the hardest question I've ever been asked in my life.
A hot dog is sort of like a 3-sided sandwich. You know, the bun comes from the bottom and the sides.
I do think that a hot dog is a sandwich. I think it meets all the criteria. It's surrounded by bread, it's got meat, it's got vegetables if you really stretch the concept of ketchup. I think it's a sandwich.
It's a different form. It's an old form that is, God, I don't know.
I don't think it's a sandwich.
Why not?
Because it's a single piece of bread. It's got to be cut in 2.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, maybe this is a St. John's thing because I've never heard this debate in my life, but I'll settle it right here. A hot dog is absolutely not a sandwich. That is it for CBC Vancouver News tonight. Thanks so much for being with us, and we will see you tomorrow.